All right, let's just jump right in. Trying to learn AI today can feel like you've been dropped into this massive, confusing maze, right? There are 1,000 different paths, a ton of noise, and it's almost impossible to know which way to turn. So in this explainer, we're going to try and draw a map based on a really deep look at the whole AI education landscape.
So, does this feel a little familiar? You really want to master AI, but you just feel stuck. On one side, you've got this super dense academic theory that feels a million miles away from actually building anything. But on the other, you've got these flashy tutorials promising you'll be an expert in 2 hours, and they just leave you more confused than when you started. It's just overwhelming, and the stakes here are pretty high, because choosing the wrong path can waste months or maybe even years of your life.
You know, what it really boils down to is that the AI learning world is dominated by two extremes. First, you've got the academic path. Think university courses. It's incredibly rigorous, all about mathematical proofs, and it absolutely gives you a solid foundation. But let's be real, it can be slow, kind of dry, and often feels totally disconnected from the actual industry. And then there's the hype path, the world of quick boot camps and bite-sized tutorials. This path is definitely fast, but it just skips over the fundamentals. It teaches you to be a tool operator, not a true problem solver. You learn what to type, but you never really understand why.
But that just begs the question, doesn't it? What if there was a third path? Let's explore an approach that could bridge that gap, One that takes the rigor of academia and combines it with the practical needs of the industry. A path that's all about deep understanding, but without getting you bogged down in endless, complicated formulas.
And this brings us to this really fascinating idea called the conceptual bridge. We're going to take a look at how one platform, Staiblocks, is a great example of this approach. Their entire philosophy is built around creating this third way, blending those deep, academically sound concepts with the kind of practical intuition that engineers actually need to get things done.
Their core mission is one word: demystification. And what's really cool is the metaphor they use here, thinking of it like a set of Russian nesting dolls. The whole point isn't to oversimplify or dumb things down. No, it's to carefully open up each layer of a complex idea, revealing the core structure hidden inside. That way, you get to see how everything connects, from the biggest concept all the way down to the tiniest detail.
Okay, so how is this demystification thing actually achieved? Well, it comes down to a really fundamental shift in teaching philosophy. This new way of teaching AI is all about prioritizing the why long before you ever get to the how. This analysis points out a huge flaw in a lot of traditional education, and it calls it the recipe syndrome. Most courses, they just give you a recipe. To do X, type these 3 lines of code. And sure, it works for that one problem. But the second you're faced with a new, unfamiliar challenge, you're totally lost. It's like you have a collection of recipes, but you don't have a map of the territory. You can't actually navigate on your own. So the solution they propose is this strategy called conceptual acceleration. And the idea is really simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You invest time up front to build a strong, accurate mental map of all the concepts. So before you write a single line of code, you first understand the terrain, you get the history, you grasp the core principles.
And this illustrates their process perfectly. It's a 5-stage model. You always start with the historical context. Why was this idea even needed in the first place? Then you build a physical intuition, like for example, thinking of gradient descent as a hiker trying to find the lowest point in a foggy valley. It just clicks. And only after that intuition is solid do you bring in the formal math, and then the code. And finally, you critique the whole thing. You explore its limitations and where it can go next.
This quote from the great mathematician Paul Hamos, it just perfectly captures the spirit of this whole approach. The goal isn't just to compute answers, it's to understand the beautiful architecture of the ideas themselves. And honestly, that's what separates a technician from a true innovator. So let's see how this philosophy actually builds out into a curriculum. Because at the end of the day, how you structure the information, how you connect the past, present, and future is every bit as important as how you explain it.
Unlike so many courses that treat AI like it just magically appeared 5 years ago, this approach builds a coherent historical story. It connects Charles Babbage's 19th century mechanical computer all the way to the Markov chains of the early 1900s, and then it shows you how those century-old ideas led directly to the transformer architecture and the LLMs we use today. The point is, something like ChatGPT isn't magic, it's the result of a long, fascinating evolution of ideas.
The curriculum is also built on the 3 academically sound pillars of AI. Now, most boot camps, they focus almost exclusively on learning, that is, machine learning. But a complete understanding also requires search, like a GPS, finding the best route, and critically, reasoning, the ability to use logic and known facts to figure out new things, kind of like a detective. This third pillar is often just completely ignored in the hype-driven courses, but it's where the future of AI is really heading.
So, with all this context, we come right back to the central question. How do you find your learning path? Let's break down the options one more time to help you make a decision that's truly right for you.
This table lays it all out pretty clearly. If you're a future researcher gunning for a PhD, then that deep, rigorous academic tier is absolutely essential. If you're a programmer who just needs to integrate a new library by tomorrow morning, the hype-driven tier might give you that quick fix. But if you're someone who wants to truly understand both the why and the how, if you want to build those deep mental models, then the conceptual bridge approach is pretty much designed for you.
And let's make this even more specific. For students and researchers, think of this approach as the perfect prerequisite. It gives you the big picture map before you have to tackle those super dense university courses. For managers and industry leaders, it's probably the best option out there for gaining a deep, strategic understanding of AI without getting totally lost in the formulas. And for programmers, it's an excellent way to finally master the why, which you can then supplement with your own hands-on coding projects to nail down the how.
So, in the end, it turns out that effective AI education really isn't about collecting a book of recipes. It's about having the knowledge and the intuition to draw your own map, so you can navigate new and unknown territories with real confidence. So, the only question left is, where will your map take you?